Have you ever wondered why, after all the years you have worked, after all the sacrifices you have made, there are still evenings when your heart feels quietly unfulfilled? There is a saying in the old Buddhist texts, "Even as a candle gives light to others, it consumes itself." So often we spend decades tending to everyone's needs, raising children, caring for aging parents, building a livelihood, and yet somewhere along the way, we forget how to nourish our own spirit. Perhaps you know that hollow ache at the end of the day when the house finally grows silent. You look around at all you've built, and still a small voice inside asks, "Have I truly been happy or only busy?" Buddhism teaches that happiness is not a single spark, but a quiet fire sustained by 4 kinds of nourishment: the dignity of honest work, the sweetness of sharing, the freedom of letting go of burdens, and the serenity of living without regret. These are not lofty ideals for monks alone. They are simple truths, meant for all of us: parents, grandparents, neighbors, ordinary people, carrying ordinary worries. Today I invite you to walk slowly with me as we explore these 4 treasures one by one. Together we will rediscover the gentle wisdom that has guided countless hearts across centuries. A reminder that no matter our age, it is never too late to tend the inner garden where true happiness grows. Part 1. The Happiness of Righteous Ownership, Atisuka. Have you ever paused just for a moment to look around your home? The walls that hold your memories, the small things you've gathered over a lifetime, and felt a quiet contentment rising in your chest. This feeling is not vanity. It is not greed. It is something simpler and far more dignified. It is the gentle happiness of knowing that what you have earned with your own hands and your own honest heart. In the Buddha's words, one who earns wealth through righteous means, who does no harm to self or others, who lives by honest effort, such a person may rejoice in their ownership. This is called Atisuka, the happiness of rightful ownership. I am reminded of a story from long ago, often told in the quiet halls of old monasteries. There was once a humble potter named Suman, who lived near the edge of a river. Every morning before sunrise, he would walk to the muddy banks with a wicker basket, scooping handfuls of clay while the mist still hugged the water. He was neither rich nor poor, just a man devoted to his craft. Day after day, he shaped simple bowls and jars, always careful that the clay came from a place no one else laid claim to. He never stole from others' land, never took more than he needed. His wife would often ask, "Suman, why do you work so hard for so little?" And he would smile softly, replying, "Because when I hold a pot in my hands, I feel the joy of knowing it is mine, earned honestly, harming no one." As the years passed, neighbors came to admire his pottery. They said it had a warmth in it, something unspoken. When asked what made his work feel different, Suman would close his eyes and say, "It's not the clay, it's the peace that lives in my heart, when I know I have not wronged anyone to have this." Imagine for a moment, if you were to look at your own life as a series of small clay pots, each representing the fruits of your effort. What stories would they hold? Would you remember the mornings you rose before dawn, or the nights you stayed up tending to your loved ones? Perhaps there were times you struggled, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on your shoulders. Times when it would have been easier to take shortcuts, to cut corners, to put your own comfort ahead of your conscience. But something in you, a quiet voice, urged you to stay true. That voice is the seed of Atisuka. And yet, this happiness is not about accumulating things for the sake of pride. It is not about how much you have. It is about the subtle knowing that whatever you hold cleanly. The Buddha often reminded his followers, a person should acquire wealth as a bee gathers nectar, gently without harming the blossom, and so his wealth grows. What a beautiful image that is, a bee collecting sweetness without destroying the flower. Have you ever considered that your life's work might be a kind of tending to blossoms, that each act of care, each honest endeavor, is a nectar you gather, not only to sustain yourself, but to share with others? There was an elder in a village, a woman named Kamala, who once told a wandering monk, "I have no gold to offer you, but I have this bread I baked at dawn, and I made it with hands that never cheated my neighbors." The monk accepted the bread with tears in his eyes, saying, "This is the purest gift, because it comes from a blameless heart." Isn't that a form of wealth too, to know you can give something untainted by harm? Perhaps today, you might pause and ask yourself, what do I possess that was earned through love, patience, and honesty? How does that knowledge make my heart feel? You may find that in this reflection, there is a softness, a subtle glow. Even if your possessions are modest, they carry a dignity that nothing can tarnish. This is the quiet treasure of Atisuka. As we close this part of our reflection, remember that righteous ownership is the foundation upon which other happiness can be built. Without it, every enjoyment risks becoming hollow. With it, even the smallest comforts shine with meaning. Before we move forward, take a slow breath. Imagine the clay in your hands, warm and yielding. Feel the gratitude for every honest effort you have made, every hour you have given, every sacrifice that was shaped not by greed, but by love. When you are ready, we will explore the next kind of happiness, the happiness that blossoms when we share what we have with open hearts. Part 2. The Happiness of Enjoyment, Bogasuka. There is a moment, perhaps familiar to you, when you sit at a table surrounded by the laughter of your family. You watch their faces, lined by time, brightened by joy, and you feel something deeper than satisfaction. It is a kind of gentle contentment, a wordless knowing that what you have earned is now flowing back into the hearts of those you love. This is Bogasuka, the happiness of rightful enjoyment. In the teachings of the Buddha, this happiness is not simply about spending wealth on pleasures for oneself. Rather, it is about sharing and savoring, using your resources in ways that nourish connection, kindness, and well-being. The Buddha once said, "Whatever wealth a householder has righteously gained, let them enjoy it, make merit, and share with others." This is a blessing that shines in all directions. There is a story told in many Buddhist communities about a merchant named Ananda who lived in the bustling city of Rajagaha. Ananda was known for his fairness in trade. Each morning, he opened his shop with a small ritual, lighting a lamp, placing his palms together, and whispering, "May all beings find ease." He prospered, not because he sought excess, but because people trusted him. Yet for many years he lived simply, hesitant to spend what he had earned. He feared that any enjoyment might taint the virtue of his work. One evening, he visited a revered elder, who asked him, "Ananda, why do you live as if you were still in poverty?" He lowered his gaze and confessed, "I am afraid that enjoying what I have will make me less pure." The elder smiled kindly and replied, "There is no virtue in hoarding what could be used to ease suffering. The gift is in the sharing, not the keeping. When you spend your wealth to care for your parents, to feed a hungry stranger, to warm your own home without greed, that is the truest enjoyment." Ananda returned home in thought. That year he repaired the leaky roof over his parents' room, bought warm blankets for his neighbors, and for the first time in decades, sat with his family over a simple meal that he provided. As he watched his loved ones eat in comfort, he felt an unfamiliar sweetness blooming in his heart. It was Bogasuka, the happiness of using his means for goodness. Perhaps you too have known this feeling. Have you ever given your time or resources to someone without expecting anything in return? A grandchild in need of school supplies, a neighbor who couldn't afford their groceries, a friend who just needed a warm place to stay. In those moments, did you notice how your chest seemed to soften, how the air felt lighter? This is the quiet joy that rises when generosity meets gratitude. And yet, Bogasuka is not only about giving to others, it is also about allowing yourself to partake in life's simple pleasures without guilt. A warm meal, a comfortable chair, a moment of music drifting through an open window. The Buddha taught that denying yourself all enjoyment can create bitterness, just as overindulgence can lead to suffering. The middle path is to savor what you have with mindfulness and moderation. Imagine a cup of tea in your hands. You do not gulp it down greedily, nor do you let it grow cold from fear of tasting it. You lift it slowly, feel its warmth, and sip with full awareness. In that small present moment, you honor both your efforts and your humanity. Bogasuka is like that cup of tea. I recall an old woman in my neighborhood when I was a boy. Her name was Clara. Though she never had much money, she was known for her kitchen always smelling of fresh bread. Whenever someone passed by, she would press a warm loaf into their hands, saying, "Eat this, and remember you are loved." She once told me, "What good is having something if you can't let it become happiness in someone else's belly?" Her house was humble, but it was rich with a kind of abundance no gold could buy. Have you ever asked yourself, what small enjoyments can I share today? How might my resources become seeds of contentment in the lives of others? When we use what we have with care and generosity, our days take on a brighter hue. Even small acts, offering a cup of tea, buying flowers for a friend, repairing something that brings comfort, become a silent prayer of gratitude. Before we move forward, let us pause here. Take a slow, mindful breath. Reflect on all the moments you have given or received a kindness, however small. Feel the warmth that arises when we let our wealth, be it money, time, or love, circulate like a gentle river, refreshing everyone it touches. And when you are ready, we will continue to the third happiness, a freedom that is not about what you have, but what you no longer owe. Part 3. The happiness of freedom from debt. Ananasukha. There is a peculiar lightness that enters the heart when we no longer owe anyone. It is not the boastful freedom of triumph, but the quiet exhale of relief, like setting down a heavy bundle you have carried across many miles. This, in the teachings of the Buddha, is Ananasukha, the happiness of freedom from debt. It is said that once, the Blessed One was seated beneath a great sal tree when a householder came and prostrated at his feet. With a trembling voice, the man confessed, "Blessed One, I am buried beneath debts. Each night, I count what I must repay, and each morning, I rise with fear pressing upon my chest." The Buddha looked at him with tender eyes and replied, "A life shackled by debt is a life unable to rest. Freedom from debt is a treasure greater than gold." Those words settled in the man's heart like a balm. I think of that story often because in many ways, debt is not just financial, it is also the debt of favors unreturned, words unspoken, mistakes unacknowledged. But today, let us begin with the most literal kind, money owed, and the gentle power that comes when it is finally released. There was an old farmer named Gopala, who lived in a village not far from the bamboo groves. For many years, drought had withered his crops, and he borrowed small sums first to buy seeds, then to buy food. Each season, he hoped for rain, but the sky remained empty. As the debts grew, so did his shame. Neighbors whispered that Gopala no longer held his head high. He stopped attending gatherings, afraid someone would ask him, "When will you repay what you owe?" One year, at last the rains came. His fields turned green again, heavy with grain, and with each harvest sack he carried to market, he placed a portion aside, not to indulge himself, but to repay every person who had lent him help when he was in need. It took him 3 years, but one morning, he carried his final payment to his creditor, a kind woman named Devi. She counted the coins, looked up at Gopala's weathered face, and smiled. "Your burden is lifted," she said simply. He walked home slowly that day, but with each step, he felt lighter. When he reached his gate, he closed his eyes and breathed in the scent of damp earth. In that moment, he felt a happiness he could not name, a feeling that at last his life belonged only to itself again. That is, Ananasukha. Perhaps you have known a version of this relief. Maybe it was the last payment on your mortgage, or the day you settled an old obligation, or perhaps it was something smaller, a borrowed tool finally returned, a promise finally kept. Have you ever noticed how, once the debt is gone, your heart seems to sit more quietly in your chest? The Buddha understood this well. He taught, when one is free from debt, when one has no burden upon the mind, one may sleep in peace and wake with joy. Debt, in any form, is like a stone in the shoe. Even if it is small, it rubs against your spirit with every step. It makes your journey heavier than it needs to be. And yet, Ananasukha is not merely about avoiding debt. It is about the discipline and mindfulness that lead to repayment. For Gopala, it was not a windfall that freed him, but years of steady effort and the humility to face what he owed. This kind of freedom does not always happen in grand gestures. Sometimes it begins in small choices, spending less than you earn, resisting the urge to impress others with what you cannot afford, honoring your agreements. And when freedom finally comes, it is a quiet liberation. You discover that peace is not only the absence of conflict, it is also the absence of obligation. Before we move forward, I invite you to reflect gently. Is there a debt, monetary or otherwise, that still tugs at your heart? What would it feel like to be free of that weight? Perhaps it is time to make a small step toward release, not because you are pressured, but because you deserve the sweetness of unburdened days. Take a slow breath now and picture yourself laying down the final stone. Feel the ease in your shoulders, the softness returning to your gaze. When you are ready, we will explore the last and most precious happiness of all, the happiness of a blameless life. Part 4. The happiness of a blameless life, Anavajasukha. There is a kind of happiness that does not depend on what you own, nor on what you have repaid, nor even on the comforts you have shared. It is a deeper current, steady, luminous, unshaken by the rising and falling tides of fortune. This is Anavajasukha, the happiness of a blameless life. The Buddha once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." And in the same way, better than a life crowded with achievements is a life that, when you look back, causes no remorse to stir in your heart. I want to tell you a story I heard long ago about a man named Chita who lived in the foothills near Savatthi. He was not a scholar or a monk, only a quiet weaver, known more for his soft voice than for any wealth. Chita rose before dawn each day to spin cotton into thread. His hands were steady, but it was his heart that made his work special. He believed that every action, no matter how small, was a reflection of the mind behind it. Once, a traveling monk came to the village and stayed beneath a banyan tree. People came with gifts of food and robes, eager to earn merit, but Chita brought nothing, only himself. The monk asked gently, "Friend, do you not wish to offer something?" Cheetah folded his palms and said, "I have no possessions to spare, but I offer you my blamelessness. In all my days, I have never cheated a customer, never spoken ill of my neighbors, never taken what was not freely given. My heart rests easy." The monk closed his eyes, and for a long moment, he said nothing. Then he opened them and replied, "Of all the offerings I have received, this is the purest, because it comes from a life without regret." When I first heard this story, I remember feeling a hush fall over me. Even now I find myself wondering, what would it be like to end each day with nothing to hide from yourself? Another Dhyasuka is not perfection. It does not mean you never err, never stumble. It means that when you do, you are honest enough to see it and gentle enough to make amends. The Buddha taught, one who lives with integrity, whose actions are pure, whose words bring no harm, sleeps with a peaceful mind. Imagine for a moment, lying in bed at the end of your life. The world has quieted. Your accomplishments, your possessions, even your debts, none of them are pressing on your mind. What remains is the soft measure of your own heart. In that silence, would you feel peace, or would you hear the echoes of unkindness, the shadows of deeds left unacknowledged? To live a blameless life is to choose, again and again, the path of gentle integrity. I once knew a woman named May, who lived just down the street from my childhood home. May wasn't known for grand gestures. She was known for the way she remembered people's birthdays, the way she always kept a promise, the way she looked you in the eye when you spoke. One afternoon, as she was nearing her final days, I visited her. She was resting by the window, a shawl over her shoulders. When I asked if she was afraid, she smiled a little and said, "No, dear, I have lived simply. I have tried not to harm anyone. What is there to fear?" Her voice was thin, but her peace filled the room so completely that I felt my own chest grow lighter. Perhaps that is the essence of Anavajasukha, to know that when your time comes, you can meet it without trembling, because you have nothing to conceal. This is not a happiness that appears overnight. It grows slowly, like a tree rising from a seed, watered by every honest word, every compassionate gesture, every moment you choose integrity over expedience. It is tempting sometimes to think that small acts do not matter, but the Buddha reminded us, drop by drop, the water jar is filled. In the same way, each small choice fills the vessel of your life. Over time, it becomes a reservoir of calm that no misfortune can drain away. Before we close, I invite you to reflect. Is there a place in your life where your heart is asking for more honesty? What would it feel like to offer yourself forgiveness and then begin again with clarity? Take a slow breath now. Feel the softness of your own sincerity. It is the most precious thing you possess, more enduring than wealth, more liberating than any debt repaid. And so we come to the end of this reflection. We have walked together through the four happinesses, the happiness of rightful ownership, of sharing, of freedom from debt, and finally, this, the happiness of a blameless life. May you carry these teachings like quiet lanterns in your heart, guiding you toward a life of gentle dignity and peace. Perhaps now, as we bring this reflection to a close, you may be wondering, how can each of us, no matter our age or circumstances, walk toward these four kinds of happiness? There is no single road, no formula etched in stone, but there are quiet steps you can take, one by one, like placing smooth pebbles along a garden path. Begin by looking gently at your life as it is, without judgment. Ask yourself, What do I own that was earned with integrity? What have I shared from my heart? What burdens can I begin to release? How can I bring more sincerity into the smallest moments? Remember, it is not necessary to have great wealth to feel Atisuka. The happiness of honest ownership, even a modest meal, prepared with care and earned righteously, is a jewel in itself. Nor must you wait for some perfect day to feel Bohogasuka, the happiness of enjoyment. Each time you share a little of what you have, each time you let yourself savor life's simple sweetness without guilt, you plant seeds of joy. When it comes to Ananasuka, the freedom from debt, know that every small repayment, every mindful choice to live within your means, brings you closer to ease. Debt may be a long journey, but every step counts. And most tender of all, Anavaja Sukha, the happiness of a blameless life, grows quietly in the soil of daily intention. Every time you choose kindness over convenience, honesty over avoidance, compassion over indifference, you water that seed. If there is one piece of gentle counsel I can offer, it is this: do not be in a hurry. These 4 happinesses are not prizes to be won. They are like 4 soft lanterns that light your path, little by little, as you keep walking with an open heart. Some days you will stumble, some days you will feel weary or uncertain. On those days, remind yourself that simply returning to the path just once more is enough. Before we part ways today, I offer you this quiet blessing. May you find the courage to look honestly at your life and the softness to forgive yourself where you have faltered. May your hands grow skillful in creating what is good, and your heart generous in sharing it. May your burdens lighten with each mindful breath, until you walk freely and unafraid. And above all, may you come to know the deep, unshakable happiness that arises from living gently and loving well. If today's reflection has touched something in you, I invite you to carry these thoughts into the days ahead, like a small lantern to warm the evening of your life. Until we meet again, may peace be the quiet companion of every step you take.